Hello everybody, my name is Mike and this is the board Cyborg. Today I am going to be showing you guys my horror DVD collection. I've already showed you guys my entire Blu-ray collection as well as my horror Blu-ray collection. These are all my horror DVDs. Not quite all of them, but I'll explain later. The vast majority of them are right here behind me, and I'm going to go through them like I did in my previous videos and kind of talk about films here and there. You know, a little bit of information, where I got them, how I feel about them, that kind of thing. And yeah, top to bottom, A to Z. I might have to split this up into 2 parts, but let's look at some movies. Alright, so right here is my DVD horror collection. Now, this is pretty much everything from A to Z, but I do have a couple boxes of horror films that are unfortunately in my closet right now that I just can't fit. I need to build another shelf. I have a few out with my Blu-rays, pretty much just the numbered ones and the double features and a couple A's maybe. But pretty much 95% of my horror DVD collection is right here. And that's what we will be taking a look at. So, let us get started from the top. Oh, and here's my really high-tech stool I have. A speaker. Well, let's not kill myself doing this. Alright, so starting at the top with the A's, the very first one here is Abby, which is a blaxploitation horror film from the 70s that is essentially an Exorcist ripoff. This is a really shitty version of it, quality-wise, and I haven't yet watched it because it's really, really bad quality. I'm hoping that gets a Blu-ray release at some point. Moving along, we've got ABCs of Death, Aerobicide. This is a pretty hard to find one. Actually, it might be on Blu-ray now. I think it's also called Killer Workout. Got one of my favorites from 1982, Alone in the Dark. This is a classic with Martin Landau and Jack Palance, and just a great little sort of deconstruction slasher type of thing, where Landau and Palance are just going crazy. Crazier in this than they were in Without Warning, for sure. We've got a lot of weird stuff here, guys. A lot of this stuff I have seen. There are a bunch that I have not. You know, because I just pick up horror movies, anything I find that was made before the year, like, 2002. An American Werewolf in Paris. Yes, I do have London, but that's on Blu-ray. The Amicus Collection, Peter Cushing, Asylum, Now the Screaming Starts, and The Beast Must Die. Amityville Horror, I need on Blu-ray. That's another thing. A lot of these are on Blu-ray, but I just haven't been able to afford them. Anguish, such an underrated 80s classic. Spanish director, fantastic. Michael Lerner, the Zelda Rubinstein from Poltergeist. Let's see, Anthropophagus. This is a Joe D'Amato film. I wasn't too impressed with it the first time around. Got a lot of alpha video. You know, these are all pretty much public domain, but some of these aren't, you know, no other company has released, so this one has been released 100 times, however. Got some Full Moon goodness, The Arcade, or Arcade. Cheesy as sci-fi. Good stuff. Let's see. The Asphyx. I love this British horror film from the late 70s. Very Hammer-esque, but not Hammer. At Midnight I'll Take Your Soul. That's Portuguese horror, Brazilian horror, I should say, from the 60s. This guy was a sick motherfucker, Jose Mojica Marins. And there's a bunch of these films where he plays a character named Coffin Joe. This is the only one I own and have seen. I need to see the others for sure. Autopsy, that's a weird Italian giallo type of film that when I first saw it, I was expecting something different. Couldn't really get into it. Bad Taste, early Peter Jackson. Coming off of Meet the Feebles with that one. Bat, Lou Diamond Phillips. Bat, The Bat, Vincent Price. Beast of Yucca Flats, honestly one of the worst films I have ever seen in my life, and it's only about an hour long. And the narrator tells every single aspect of the story. The man moves to his left and raises his right arm, and it's like really bad. Mystery Science Theater did this one. I haven't seen that one, but yeah, really bad movie. One of the worst that I own. And that is saying something. Oh, I need this on Blu-ray. Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask. Scream Factory just put it out. The Being is a Landau film from the 80s. Some trauma goodness there. Beware, Children at Play. The Binding, Bite Me, those are 2 I haven't seen. Black Cadillac, some weird The Car ripoff with Randy Quaid that I've not seen. Black Magic, this is Shaw Brothers martial arts horror. Can't go wrong with that. Great film. Black Sheep, an Irish horror film about zombie sheeps. Can't be bad. Well, I have seen it. It is not. Blackenstein, the Black Frankenstein, blaxploitation. Blair Witch 2, this is an underrated sequel. I love Blair Witch 2. I think it's a blast and sort of a deconstruction of the first film. Nobody sees it that way, apparently, though. Bless the Child. I love these 90s sort of cult missing child movies. There's a bunch of them. First Power comes to mind. There's no missing child in that, but it's like Sacrifice, Satan, all that good stuff. So I really like those types of movies. Bless the Child, I think, was this? Chuck Russell. Yep, Chuck Russell. I had a feeling. Chuck Russell did Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. He did The Mask, a bunch of underrated little movies. Scorpion King. And we got the Blind Dead collection. I love this collection. I know these are starting to come out on Blu-ray if they're not already out on Blu-ray. But this has Night of the Seagulls, Ghost Galleon, Return of the Evil Dead, and Tombs of the Blind Dead. The Armando de Osorio Spanish zombie films. They're very unlike any other zombie films I've ever seen. Thick in atmosphere and really just dreadful all around, with some great designs for the zombies. Very unique. The Blob, which is far superior to the original The Blob with Steve McQueen. I'm not a big fan of the original Blob. I get it. I get its charm and its campiness, but the 80s Blob, directed by Chuck Russell, same guy who did Bless the Child. So, love this movie. So underrated, great effects. We've got Blood Sisters, Blue Sunshine. Man, I need to get this on Blue, but I think the Blue is just super out of print now. Crazy late 70s LSD weird f***er of a movie. Boa, starring Dean Cain. Body Parts, starring Jeff Fahey. Underrated film. Weird Frankenstein deconstruction sort of film. Bogus Witch Project. I don't know why I own that. Bones, I know why I own that. Snoop Doggy Dogg, Ernest Dickerson film that I actually like. The Boogeyman, Uli Lomel, Book of Blood, some Asian horror here. The Booth, I've not seen this one. This one looks to be Japanese. Botched. This was a weird movie, very weird movie that I don't remember too well, but I remember an apartment building and like ancient curses and warriors and shit. Now, this is a crazy f***ing movie that I need to do a whole episode on one day. Couldn't even get through this movie the first time because of animal sacrifices, or what I thought to be legit animal sacrifices. My friend thinks they were fake, but this is just completely off the chain. Shaw Brothers, Chinese horror, mysticism, crazy black magicness, and it's phenomenal. It's some of the weirdest, most disturbing imagery I've ever seen in a film, and I really do like it. I don't love it, but I like it quite a bit because of its weirdness. Really cool cinematography in that one too. The Brain That Wouldn't Die. I love this movie. One of my favorite campy 60s movies. This one's from 62. This one influenced one of my own personal scripts, short films that I've yet to produce. Brain Scan, an early, like a mid-90s video game movie about a kid who gets involved with this crazy character from a video game and Satan and stuff. Breeders, one from the 80s, one from the 90s, both suck. The Bride, I've not seen this. This stars Sting as like a Dr. Frankenstein sort of character. Sure. Bruce Lee Fights Back from the Grave. Haven't seen that gem yet, but I've seen some shots from it, some scenes. Bug, couldn't get into this William Fried... Oh, wait, no. Just kidding. This is not the William Friedkin film. I've yet to see this about giant cockroaches that shoot flames out of their ass. I'm looking forward to that one, though. Maybe a date night. Call of Cthulhu, a great old school, done in the style of the like 30s Universal horror type of thing, but it was made in the 2000s. Call of Cthulhu. It was made by like a museum, like a Lovecraft museum or something like that. Really, really cool. I love it. It's done in the silent fashion, so I guess it's not quite 30s, more like 20s, with really great stop motion, and it really invokes a lot of what Lovecraft was trying to do with his stories, and more so than a lot of Lovecraft adaptations. Forgive the lackluster lighting and the shadowing, guys. It's the best I can do right now. Cannibal the Musical, Trey Parker, Matt Stone, early, I believe this was their first directed film, a little after South Park, and Cannibal the Musical. Can't go wrong with that, a musical about cannibalism. The Card Player, that's a later Argento film. Carnosaur, love these movies. You know, they're derivative, they're rip-offs, they're Corman, bloody, you know, ridiculous. Carnosaur 2 is literally lifted, the entire script is lifted from Aliens. It's unbelievable. Even some lines, direct scenes, just copies of it. It's great. Carnival of Souls, absolutely need that on Blu-ray. Not the biggest fan of Carnival of Souls. I do appreciate it, you know, and understand its importance in the genre. But I do want to upgrade to Blu-ray and give it another shot. This is a remake that Wes Craven, like, produced or something. Cat and the Canary, another alpha. The Cell, I need to get this on Blu-ray. This is an underrated Jennifer Lopez, Vince Vaughn movie of all things. Vincent D'Onofrio, I think is the villain, if I remember correctly. And that's a Tarsem Singh film. Cemetery Man, directed by Michael Soavi, Italian film. I'm a big fan of this movie as well. Haven't seen it in quite some time. The Children of the Corn movies that aren't on Blu-ray I have there. There's a couple of them. Children of the Corn 2 and Children of the Corn Revelation. Chiller, another one of the worst films that I have in my horror collection. This is a Wes Craven directed TV movie with Paul Sorvino, and it's ass. Chillers, this is a really good, underrated little anthology film from the late 80s, released by Troma. This one's actually signed by, it looks like, the director, so that's pretty sweet. Circus of Fear, some public domain Christopher Lee circus movie. Club Dread, this is actually one of my favorite of the Broken Lizard movies. You know, Jay Chahandra Sakar, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. This was like a parody slasher that came out in the early 2000s, and I really liked it when it came out. Haven't seen it in a while. Class of Nukem High, Lloyd Kaufman, of course. Commonwealth, Alex de Iglesia film here that I've not even opened. This one's out of print, I believe. It's supposed to be really good. Contamination, Italian horror, aliens ripoff, great stuff. This is a great Corman collection. Don't let the tin throw you off. Tins usually equate to cheap budget releases, but this is actually Shout Factory. And it has Not of This Earth, Attack of the Crab Monsters, which I love, and War of the Satellites. I've seen all but Not of This Earth. No, I've seen Not of This Earth and Attack of the Crab Monsters, not War of the Satellites. Great Corman collection. Another great Corman collection. This has one of my favorite Corman films on it. Where is it? X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, which is sort of his homage to The Invisible Man. The story is essentially The Invisible Man. But it's great. Also, A Bucket of Blood, starring Dick Miller, the late Dick Miller. Rest in peace, homie. Count Dracula, this is a BBC version. Starring Louis Jordan, that I've yet to see. I've heard this one's very close to the novel. Creep, I've heard good things about the found footage film Creep. Haven't seen it. Crowley, Critters Collection, Cry Wolf. Saw this in the theater when I was in high school. That's right. And I remember liking it. Haven't seen it since. Here's some like blaxploitation full moon pictures here with primarily all black actors and cast. So this is really cool to have. Haven't seen them. Cube 2, Hypercube, and Cube 0. Cube 2, Hypercube may be the only sequel where the name of the original film is in the title twice. I know that's specific, but I believe it to be true. Curse of the Demon and Night of the Demon, some great British horror here. It has the American cut and the British cut. I believe the British cut is superior. Curse of the Devil, this is a Spanish film the Spanish horror film starring Paul Naschy. Released by Anchor Bay. Love it. Great movie. Atmospheric. Curse of Halloween. This one's funny. This has this funny story. My father used to collect movies, and one day he came across this, and it was like some production that was done around where we grew up, and it's probably the worst movie I have in my entire collection. It's abysmal, but we never understood how it got into the collection, and it's sort of this tradition now to watch that. Not every Halloween, but I don't know. As often as one could stand. Cursed, underrated Wes Craven werewolf movie. Some really shitty early 2000s like slashers. This one stars Busy Bone from Bone Thugs in Harmony. That's right. And Mac 10 from Dub C. West Side Connection. So, The Damned. This is Hammer. Dance with the Devil. The Dark. Two versions of The Dark. Dark Heritage is a Lovecraft adaptation. Dark Water, Japanese horror. The American remake with Jennifer Connelly sucks. Darkness Falls, I did see this one in theaters back in the day, coming off the Ring hype. I remember liking it. Haven't seen it in a long time. Probably doesn't hold up too well. And we have more British horror here. Day of the Triffids. Haven't opened this one yet. It's a Region 2. This is about, like, killer trees. So, definitely need to see that. Dead Alive. This is a pretty lackluster copy. I do not have it on Blu-ray. It's one of my favorites, so I should. But the Blu-ray is extremely out of print. Dead End. Underrated Ray Wise, Lin Shaye movie. Just great twist, very Twilight Zone. Dead End Drive-In, I have seen this before, but not on DVD. I saw it back in the day, by other means. Dead Girl, it's a weird one. Maybe a little too weird. I'll give it another whirl one day. Love, Dead Heat. You know, this is a buddy cop zombie movie. One of Vincent Price's last roles. Joe Piscopo, Treat Williams. Love this movie. Grew up watching this with my father. Still haven't seen many films like it. Dead Pit, great little 80s underrated horror movie. Dead Snow 2, need that on Blue. Dead Silence, underrated James Wan film, or a forgotten James Wan film, really. Death Machine, Rowdy Harrington, or Stephen Norrington, that's his name, I get the two mixed up. This is a great cyberpunk film starring Brad Dourif as like a crazy scientist doctor. Awesome. Decadent Evil 1 and 2, Full Moon movies. Deep Blue Sea, Rennie Harlan shark movie starring LL Cool J and Thomas Jane, and everybody remembers the scene with Samuel L. Jackson getting tore up after an inspirational speech. Death by Temptation, this is a primarily black casted and crew trauma movie. Kadeem Harrison, love him, and Early Sam Jack, directed by James Bond III. Let's see, Delicatessen, The Demon, starring Cameron Mitchell. Demons 3, Lamberto Bava, I just talked about that recently in a pickup video I did, What's in the Bag video. The Dentist, it's a little forgotten 90s classic starring Corbin Bernsen. Pretty disturbing scenes, especially if you're afraid of the dentist. Devour, Devil Times 5, that's a weird late 70s horror film. Disturbing Behavior. This is a great early 2000s sort of slasher, you know, inspired by the Scream era of movies. It's actually not really a slasher. It's more like of a body snatchers type of film. Some more Asian horror here. Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. This is archive collection from the 70s. This was remade. Guillermo del Toro produced it a few years back. It wasn't that great. Haven't seen the original, to be honest. Don't Answer the Phone. Some classics. Jekyll and Hyde. Love Jekyll and Hyde. Especially, I haven't seen the Spencer Tracy one. I've heard great things, but Frederick March, this is the superior one to me. From the ones I've seen a bunch. Dr. Orloff's Monster, I believe this is Jesus Franco, Jess Franco. Yep, can't really get into Jess Franco's erotic horror film, so I'll give that a whirl. Argento's Dracula, Dracula 2000, 3000, one of the worst films I've ever seen. Dracula Dead and Loving It, Mel Brooks, underrated sort of follow-up to Young Frankenstein. Dracula's Curse, don't know much about that. Dread, Drainiac, it's like a 90s low-budget horror film here with some practical effects, good stuff. Might be shot on video. Dreamcatcher, still can't get through that movie. I've tried multiple times. I would like to get through it so that I can judge it and for what it is and get it out of the collection if it sucks penis. Dressed to Kill, Dunwich Horror, early Lovecraft adaptation here from the 70s starring Dean Stockwell and Ed Begley. Good stuff. Dylan Dog, very Buffy the Vampire Slayer, fun movie starring Brandon Routh, you know, Superman, or yeah. Edge of Sanity, a really underrated Jekyll and Hyde story with Anthony Perkins, who does a fantastic job. Eight-Legged Freaks, a fun monster mash from the early 2000s, starring David Arquette, of all people. I have the a bunch of Elvira movies here, some movies that are hard to find otherwise, are in these Elvira's Movie Macabre sets here. Let's see here. More Elvira stuff, a couple of her movies. End of the Line, loved this movie. A really good Christian cult or religious cult subway weird motherfucker of a movie, but great, with a great ending, and I believe it's a Canadian film. Equinox, couldn't really get into this movie the first time. I heard it was kind of the predecessor to Evil Dead, And it certainly is, just not... wasn't too impressed with it. There are a couple cuts on that disc, so maybe I just watched the wrong cut. Ernest Scared Stupid, grew up with this movie. Love this movie. Definitely my favorite Ernest movie. Exeter, Exhumed, Exorcism. This is another Jess Franco, which I haven't seen. This one has another cut that takes out all the gratuitous sex, so that might suit me better. This is Evil Dead Trap 2. Yeah, I love these Evil Dead Trap movies. A lot like Saw. I'm sure James Wan saw these when he was in his formative years. The Eye 1 and 2, the Pang Brothers. I See You, a weird slasher with Stallone. It's a little misguided. It's not bad. It's a lot of great actors, Robert Patrick, and just a ton of great actors in it, but it's kind of lackluster, forgettable. Faceless, which is a remake of Eyes Without a Face. I do have the Faces of Death stuff, which scarred me as a kid. Faculty, Fade to Black, and Hell Night. Another Spanish Armando de Osorio film. Fangs of the Living Dead. Fear.com. Everybody says this is one of the worst movies of all time. I haven't seen it in quite some time, but I do remember not minding it when I was a kid. The Feast movies. I haven't seen the sequels, but the first one is classic. Practical effect monster, and just great cast, and a lot of big horror people and Hollywood people behind that movie, actually. Matt Damon, Wes Craven. Fire in the Sky, a really scary alien abduction film based on a true story. This one's out of print. Love this movie. Flesh Eater. This one stars and actually is directed by Bill Hinsman, the first zombie we see in Romero's Night of the Living Dead. So it's interesting to have for that reason. Haven't seen it. Nah, Food of the Gods Part 2 just picked up. The Fly 2, underrated sequel to The Fly, to Cronenberg's The Fly. With still some great effects. And actually a scene that might be even more disturbing than everything in The Fly, and involves the kid's dog. And it's up. The Forsaken. I like this early 2000s rare, random vampire film. Vampires in the Desert film. Super, early 2000s in terms of its aesthetic and music and everything, but I love it. Had a great time with it. Bunch of the Fox horror classics. Some really cool films in those with some great actors. There's Lugosi as Shandu the Magician. Frankenstein, that's Frankenstein Unbound. This is Roger Corman's Frankenstein film, his last directed film. John Hurt and Raul Julia as Dr. Frankenstein. Loved this movie when I first saw it. It's a blast. Bunch of different Frankenstein movies. Freaks. Fright Night 1 and 2. Still don't have Fright Night on Blu-ray. It is accessible now, so I do need to pick it up. Frightmare, Pete Walker film from the 70s. Really good. Pete Walker's an underrated British filmmaker. From Dusk Till Dawn 2 and 3. Not very good. Full Eclipse. This is a weird Anthony Hickox TV movie about Mario Van Peebles' character who turns into is it a vampire or is it a werewolf? I believe they're werewolves, yeah. An HBO film. Not bad. It's sort of like a buddy cop werewolf movie. It's strange, but not bad. Funny Games, the remake. I don't have the original. I've actually not seen the original. I would like to. The Gardener. This is a pretty bad movie with a great cover. Joe D'Alessandro is in this. Really weird, sort of Italian. It has an Italian vibe to it. I don't think it's an Italian film, but it does have an Italian vibe, and just kind of boring. Not great. Gargoyles. This is Bernie Casey. This is a early 70s, I believe 72 TV movie that Stan Winston worked on. Prom Night and the Gate. Ghost in the Machine, starring Chris Mulkey. Ghost Ship. Haven't seen that. Or I've tried in the past, but haven't gotten through it. Would like to give it a fair judgment. Ghost Snatchers. Yeah, this is Chinese Ghostbusters, essentially. Directed by Lam Nam Choi, excuse me. Ghost Story. Great little 80s ghost horror haunted house film, with Fred Astaire and Melvin Douglas Fairbanks, just great cast. John Carpenter, Ghost of Mars. I love Ghost of Mars. Nostalgia probably has something to do with it, but I do think it's not as bad as people claim. The cast is a little weird. I just wish it was Escape from Mars with, Kurt Russell as Snake, but it's okay. I still like Ghost of Mars. Really, really fun movie with rockin' early 2000s soundtrack. The Ghoul, underrated little MGM Boris Karloff film. And then we got the Ghoulies movies, Ginger Snap sequels, which I do have the first one on Blu-ray. Haven't seen the sequels. Ginger Dead Man, starring Gary Busey, I believe, as the titular character. That's a trilogy. Box is a little messed up. God Monster of Indian Flats. What else needs to be said? Godsend. Little underrated 2000s movie with Robert De Niro and some good performances. Not a bad story. The Golem, early German horror. Gothic, the insane Ken Russell. Really like this movie. I like all of Ken Russell's work. It's just so bizarre and entrenches you in just decadence and surreal environments. I love it. Gozu, that's Takashi Miike. Grabbers, this is an underrated, I believe, Irish little horror comedy. I really like this movie. Some great dialogue in the movie. Grave Encounters 2. Haven't seen Grave Encounters 2. I am a fan of the first one. Graveyard Shift, with the giant rats. Stephen King movie. Grimm, not a good movie. Not a good 90s monster movie there. The Grudge, not a bad remake. It was actually directed by Takashi Shimizu, who did the original. So if you're going to do a remake, get the original director. I approve of that. The Gruesome Twosome, Herschel Gordon Lewis. I don't have the big Blu-ray set, man. I really need it before it goes out of print. Not a good filmmaker. I've talked about him in a previous video. Not a great filmmaker, but he definitely changed the game in terms of gore and blood. Gutterballs, Habit. This is a Larry Fessenden film. I believe a vampire film. It's kind of water damaged, unfortunately. Some Hammer that aren't on Blu-ray. Well, 7 Golden Vampires. I own this set for 7 Golden Vampires. I believe that is getting a release by Scream, or already has. Hannibal Rising, Harbinger Down. What a disappointment. Directed by Alec Gillis. Ugh. Lance Henriksen. This is the movie that was made with the practical effects that were cut out from The Thing prequel from 2011. Haunted Castle, early haunted house film by Murnau Kino. Really cool. Haunted Honeymoon. This one's a Gene Wilder film, actually. And Gilda Radner. The Haunting. Love this Robert Wise film. Such a classic. Such a beautiful black and white gothic horror film. Some incredible sets. The remake, I saw with Liam Neeson and Catherine Zeta-Jones. I saw this first. When it actually came out, I was probably 11, something like that. Didn't mind it. And this Scary Movie 2 parodies this quite a bit. And, it wasn't as bad as everybody claims it to be, but I haven't seen it in some time, so. Haxan, which desperately needs a Blu-ray. I have seen this film, but not by other means I've seen it. Headless Eyes, Head of the Family, some Full Moon, Hell of the Living Dead, Hidden. This is an underrated little sci-fi action buddy cop kind of movie. Michael Nowery and Kyle MacLachlan plays sort of an alien guy that helps track this other alien. Really cool, and the alien could assume the identity of anyone, so it's sort of like The Thing in a way, or hide in bodies. I'm rambling. Hideaway, Jeff Goldblum film. High Tension, good French action horror film. The Hitcher still needs a Blu-ray. It's a absolute cinema sin that this has not gotten a Blu-ray. Rutger Hauer is transcendent in this film. C. Thomas Howell, one of the best road horror movies. I do have the sequel and the remake. Haven't seen those. This is a great set. I love this set. If I can get it out. Legends of Horror collection by Archive. It's got a bunch of cool films on it. Dr. X, The Return of Dr. X, which Dr. X is a Michael Curtis film. Michael Curtis did Casablanca. And then Humphrey Bogart was in the sequel. So there's some weird connections there. But then we have The Mask of Fu Manchu, Mark of the Vampire, starring Bela Lugosi. Boris Karloff's in The Mask of Fu Manchu. Mad Love, which is about a severed hand, starring Peter Lorre. And then The Devil Dolls. So some really cool, by Browning, Todd Browning. So, who did Dracula. So some really cool early, sort of forgotten horror films from the 30s and 40s. Really great set. Pick it up if you haven't. Hood of the Living Dead. I'm not expecting much from that. Horror at Party Beach. This film, 60s film, I believe, was mostly shot in my hometown of Stamford, Connecticut. And one of my dad's old friends is actually in a couple scenes. So, and it's a pretty cheesy, fun movie. House 1 and 2, love both of those movies. House 2 is even crazier than the first one, which is saying something. House of the Dead, ooh, that's a bad one. Uwe Boll. My goal is to collect all of the video game movies that exist, so I have to have it in the collection. Also, I have Alone in the Dark. Oof, that's even worse. That might be one of the worst films I've ever seen. House on Haunted Hill remake. I do like it quite a bit. Not as much as the original, but it's close. House Where Evil Dwells, a weird Japanese cultured American horror film with a dead samurai who exacts revenge on this American family. Howling 2 and Howling 3, The Marsupials. Oh, and Howling 4. Yeah. Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf. Howling 3, The Marsupials. One of the strangest horror film series ever. Like this series just goes completely off the rails. I mean, by the second film. But they're fun, for sure. Hunchback of Notre Dame starring Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, pretty cool. I haven't seen that. The Hunger, David Bowie. Tony Scott, his first directed film, I believe. I, Madman, I Know What You Did Last Summer trilogy. I Vampiri, this is the first Italian horror film. The first. From the late 50s, 56, mid-50s. Directed by Mario Bava. Identity, saw that in theaters, still love it. Great movie. Idle Hands, great severed hand film, horror comedy. The Incubus, a weird movie that just the payoff didn't quite do it for me. Incubus, starring William Shatner. This is a whole film spoken in Esperanto, which was meant to be like a universal language of some sort that just never caught on. I don't know the specifics, but Esperanto, that's the name of the language, and it stars William Shatner. Can't go wrong. That's the end of part 1, guys. There will be a part 2 soon, and it'll go through the next 5 shelves. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.